Let's face it, 2025 is already shaping up to be a pretty scary year, but at least there'll be video games aplenty to take our minds off things. And what better way to forget about the horrors of the real world than by immersing yourself in some of the most exciting upcoming tales of terror from 2025. I'm Eurogamer's Ian Higton, and what follows are my choices for the most exciting horror games that we can look forward to in 2025, that we know of so far, of course. And also, there's a few honourable mentions at the end too, so stay tuned for those as well. Right, let's make you awares of the scares. The Little Nightmares series has always been a huge hit with horror fans, but how will this third instalment handle with the new developer at the reins? Judging from our Little Nightmares 3 hands-on at this year's EGX, it seems like Supermassive has nailed the series' signature sneaky meets creepy gameplay, so hopefully this tale of childhood fears come to life will be just as compelling as the ones that came before. Playing as brand new characters, Lo and Alone, who both have their own signature items, a bow for Lo and a wrench for Alone? Couldn't they have just given them something that rhymed too? Like, I don't know, a trombone for Alone? Anyway, Little Nightmares 3 takes place in a new area of the nowhere called The Spiral, and it features online co-op, so players can enjoy getting the fear with a friend if they so wish.
I've always wanted to fly. The joy of it, the freedom of it.
From one supermassive game to another now with Directive 8020, the first game in the second season of the developer's Dark Pictures anthology. The quality and critical reception has been fairly varied for the previous games in the Dark Pictures anthology, but with each new release, Supermassive has added new features in order to better serve the scares, and Directive 8020 is no different. Instead of featuring the highly scripted hazards from Season 1, this time players will face real-time alien threats on board the crashed colony ship Cassiopeia. Combine this unpredictability with some tense The Thing-inspired who is human and who is not gameplay, and you've got all the makings of an edge-of-your-seat horror game that puts the ARG in cinematic. Oh no, I think that one worked better in my head. You can't really have a list about horror games without including something that can be described as Lovecraftian, and The Sinking City 2 is exactly that. Featuring designs inspired by the imagination of H.P. Lovecraft and set in the 1920s in the flooded alleys and decrepit mansions of a labyrinthine city called Arkham, no, not that one, The Sinking City 2 features a standalone story from the previous game, so you won't have to play catch-up if you decide to dive straight into this one. With a semi-open world and a focus on survival horror and puzzle-solving gameplay, The Sinking City 2 sounds incredibly promising, and something that fans of things like the recent Silent Hill 2 remake might be interested in. Best of all though, it looks very scary indeed, and with mind-bogglingly supernatural scenes like this one going on, you'll be forgiven if you accidentally HP your pants. Kyle Crane is back for more parkouring, fly-kicking, zombie-stabbing action in Dying Light the Beast, a standalone installment in the series that's set in the remains of an old tourist destination. Castor Woods, as that location is called, is set to be a tightly crafted open world that features small villages, large industrial complexes, and a whole host of perfectly placed assets for Kyle to run at and along and then jump off of as he once again uses the power of his legs to avoid the undead. There's not a huge amount of information out there about this one yet, but going from what little there is, the Beast looks to be sticking tightly to Dying Light's established formula. You know, rescue survivors during the day and cack your pants during the night as you presumably run away from volatiles again. If that sounds too much like hard work though, don't worry, as Dying Like the Beast also features 4-player co-op, so you can get your friends to hold down the zombies while you lay the boot in. While Dying Like the Beast seems like a comfortable, more of the same horror game, Holstin here offers a completely different and utterly unique take on tackling the undead. At first glance, Holstin looks like one of the many indie-produced, retro-inspired horror games that have released in the past few years. But as soon as I saw the way the third-person puzzling and exploration gameplay switched to an over-the-shoulder viewpoint for some hardcore, gore-tastic, zombie-blasting action, I was all in. Set in a small town in Poland in 1992, it's your job to discover the whereabouts of your missing friend Bartek and get him the hell out of there before it's too late. If it isn't already, of course. If the classic hand-drawn pixel art visuals combined with modern lighting techniques haven't won you over already, then hopefully the promise of gunning down the game's twisted monstrosities with a variety of weapons will encourage you to keep this one on your watch list.
Hello? Where is this?
Believe it or not, Post-Trauma isn't a game about what happens when you find out that something you've ordered online is being delivered by Every. Unlike Holstin, which tries to do things a bit differently, Post-Trauma is unashamedly a tribute to survival horror classics of old, just with a bunch of modern bells and whistles under the hood. Playing as Roman, a tormented train conductor, is there really any other type of train conductor, who wakes up in a nightmare dimension full of abominations and abstract architecture, it's up to you to find a way home by finding clues, solving puzzles, and, presumably, avoiding something shoving a tentacle into one of Roman's orifices. Built in Unreal Engine 5, but featuring classic fixed camera angles, this one should appeal to horror heads, both old and new. If you loved the recent Silent Hill 2 remake from Bloober Team, then prepare to get hype for Cronos: The New Dawn, a game in which you, playing as something called a Traveller, have to locate key people from the past and extract their essences. Details on Cronos are pretty sparse at the moment, but what we do know is that 1. The game is set in the aftermath of a cataclysmic event known as The Change. 2. It's a survival horror game where you'll encounter nightmarish creatures spawned from the remnants of humanity. And 3. It features a helmet that looks like the underside of an incredibly angry bellend. Whew, stinky. With a trailer that gives off some great Bioshock meets Dead Space vibes, this could be one of the most interesting and unsettling horror games of 2025.
Steady!
Found footage horror movies aren't as popular as they once were, but that hasn't stopped developer Digital Cybercherries from creating one of the most visually appealing horror games of 2025. Built in Unreal Engine 5 and featuring ultra-realistic visuals that look like a cross between Phasmophobia and police body cam footage, gameplay in Paranormal Tales involves the player exploring the unique locations found across multiple found footage videotapes. Yep, that's right, this isn't just a found footage game, this is a found footage anthology horror game. So if you're a fan of the VHS movies, for instance, PT here should be up there as one of your most wanted games of the year. Wait, Paranormal Tales? PT? Oh, I see what they did there. Clever.
This is not happening. What is this place?
If you were worried that your upcoming horror games wouldn't have enough Lovecraft in them, fear not, because Decadent here is yet another Lovecraft-inspired horror game set in the 1920s, and it's also due for release in 2025. While The Sinking City 2 is a third-person shooter, however, Decadent lets you explore the horror and the madness of a place called the Baron from a first-person perspective. That means you'll be able to shoot a lot of scary things in the face, with everything from 1920s firearms to hexed pistols and even alien bioweapons, which sounds pretty cool to me. Featuring a dynamic sanity system that means you're always on the brink of panic attacks and hallucinations, just like I am in real life, and a bizarre world to explore that's full of depraved mountain tribes, hybrid aquatic creatures, and ever-shifting horrors, which sounds a bit like Swindon, Decadent has all of the makings of a horror classic. And talking of horror classics, the Killing Floor series is back with its third instalment, imaginatively titled Killing Floor 3. If you've never played a Killing Floor game before, imagine a cross between Left 4 Dead and COD Zombies turned up to 11, and you'll have a pretty good idea about what's in store for you and up to 5 friends in this gore-soaked first-person shooter. Tripwire Interactive knows exactly what it's doing with these games now, so if you're up for inserting high-speed bullets into zombies in one of the most polished, intense and fast-paced action shooters of the year, you can look no further than Killing Floor 3, because that's what it'll be. Unless Tripwire cock it up somehow, but I'm sure it'll make a killing either way. Honestly, you wait ages for one horror game starring a man called Alan to come along, and then, with the upcoming release of The Occultist, we're getting 2 of them in as many years. This Alan isn't a writer though, this Alan is an occultist who travels with a mystical pendulum that allows him to interact with and modify the environment around him. Described as a narrative first-person horror game, The Occultist doesn't actually feature any combat, and it instead sees you using the game's many stealth mechanics to help Alan survive his time on the cursed island of Godstone as he searches for his father, Alan Sr. Not really, I don't actually know what Alan's father is called, but what I do know is that Alan's surname is Rebels, and I'm literally flabbergasted by the fact that somehow, with all the potential names available in the world, the developers of this game have somehow come up with a name that's even worse than Alan Wake. Blimey. Game looks good though. Are you ready to rip and or tear, but preferably both, in a single-player prequel to Doom and Doom Eternal? Because if you are, make sure you drink in this gameplay from the upcoming origin story of the Doomslayer himself. And I'm pretty sure this one's got nothing to do with Link either. So sorry, Luke Westaway, it was a good theory, but that myth is busted. So far, there's not too much information about what's in store for the Doomslayer in this game, but as the Dark Ages bit of the title suggests, players will be going medieval on demons old and new, with classic weapons like the super shotgun and new tools like the flail and the throwable shield saw. Most exciting of all, however, is the promise that we'll be able to enter the cockpits of both a skyscraper-sized mech called the Atlan to indulge in some kaiju-sized smackdowns and a jet-powered aerial vehicle called the Mecha Dragon. Doom? More like doom me a favour and come out ASAP.
I've decided that this abandoned farm will be the place where I die. But that day's a way off. At least I hope so.
If I was to tell you that We Harvest Shadows here is Silent Hill meets Stardew Valley, I wouldn't be surprised if you asked me to take a breathalyzer test. But that is absolutely what this game is, and that makes it one of, if not the most interesting and unique horror game on this list. Just like in a normal cozy farming sim, players will need to fix up their farmhouse, care for their livestock, and improve their farmstead during the day. But things take a turn at night when the slow burn horror comes out to play. We Harvest Shadows is a narrative experience which focuses on the building of the tension and atmosphere over cheap jump scares, but this means that when the scares do come, they will continue to haunt you for a long time after the credits have rolled. Now, obviously, those were only a handful of games out of literally hundreds of upcoming horror titles, but I should give some honorary mentions to the following 5 games that aren't technically horror, but will still deliver some much anticipated scares in 2025. Soggy survival game Subnautica 2, for instance, won't always be scary, But you can bet your little cotton swim socks that you'll poop your wetsuit as soon as a leviathan emerges from the murky depths below you. Death Stranding 2 on the beach is undoubtedly going to be more mad than monstrous, but that won't stop the BTs, or whatever other bonkers stuff Kojima has in store for us, sending shivers down our spines. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 may feature nasty, blood-sucking vampires, which are usually a good staple of the horror genre, but in the Chinese Rooms game, you are the vampire and you are the monster who stalks and feeds on the city's population by night. So it's only really a horror game for them then, and not you? Never mind. Another game that's on the cusp of being a horror game but isn't really is Gears of War E-Day. Set 14 years before Gears of War, Marcus and Dom are back in a game that features frequent violence and gore as it tells the origin story of the Locust Horde. And finally, there's Jurassic Park Survival, a single-player action game that, just like the movie, probably isn't scary for about 75% of its runtime, but then a bunch of raptors will trap you in a kitchen or something and you'll put the terror in Tyrannosaurus. Tyrannosaurus? Look, I tried, okay? And that is me done. I'm sure you've got a list of your own spooky games that you're looking forward to in 2025, so please do let us know all about them in the comments below, because the more the merrier, in my opinion. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, subscribe to Eurogamer for almost daily videos about video games, and why not click on one of the other videos that are on screen and clickable right now. Goodbye. Boo! Did I get you? Did it make you jump? Did it make you jump? No? Oh, okay, bye.